Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where frontline sales leaders teach you how to build and scale an outbound sales team. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your co-host, Collin Stewart. Today, I also have cardboard cutout Aaron, but I'm only going to show you just the top of his head right there. If you're just listening, you'll have to check us out on YouTube, figure out what the hell I'm talking about. Today we got a slightly different episode happening. We're gonna try and get a little bit funny. John and I are having a beer here because it's Friday evening your time. Thanks for joining us so late, my friend.
No problem. Thank you for having me. At a time I can drink alcohol in a socially acceptable and professional manner.
Yeah, technically it's actually like 8 a.m. my time, but we're gonna just pretend it's Friday afternoon.
That's fine. One of us has a problem, and the other one is conforming to the norms of society. There we
go.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about making sales a little bit more fun, a little bit more funny. We're going to try and inject a little bit of humor into cold calling and cold emailing. So John, I'd like to introduce Jon Selig to the podcast.
You got it,
John. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So bit of a different background because you started off in sales, then you made the transition to stand-up comedian, and now you're back helping sales teams use humor. Talk to me about what that's like.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I've ever really left the professional world because I never really tried to establish myself full-time as a comedian. I sold for 12 years, and I like to say that sales was just this really well-paid internship for a career in stand-up comedy. And, I never set out, like I said, I want to tour and I want to be a headliner and get a Netflix special. It's just kind of ridiculous. It's a grind. And as salespeople might appreciate, there's no money in it. So, but I learned a lot of skills in stand-up. And I originally kind of fell into stand-up because I thought I was signing up for a comedy writing class. And then when I got there, I was told it's stand-up and that the final exam is going to be 5 minutes of stand-up comedy that I have to perform for my friends and family. And my initial instinct was, I am not doing that. That is not why I'm here.
I'm out.
Yeah, I just kind of thought we'd write some, I'd meet some cool people, maybe create some funny YouTube videos. That was kind of where my interests lie. But every week, the teacher would give us some homework to do, and it was all about comedy writing and ultimately towards the goal of putting together that 5 minutes. So I'd get up in front of the class every week. I had been a field sales rep and presented to no shortage of clients who are ultimately the toughest audience there is. And I didn't mind if people didn't laugh at my jokes. It didn't faze me. I figured I just need to iterate the message. The message is iterative in comedy. You need to keep editing and refining and tweaking to the point where you are getting those little payoffs that comedians are looking for. So after about 7 weeks of the 10-week class, I said, you know what, I can do this. I've had much harder times getting up in front of like a giant sales team at Oracle and fibbing about my forecast and holding confidence and puffing my chest out that way. That was way more intimidating than getting up in front of a really friendly audience who were there to see a bunch of people do stand-up for the first time. And I just said, I'm going to go ahead and do this. The only caveat is I invited nobody that I knew to come watch me.
Well played, sir. Well played. Mm. So talk to me about, why use humor when you're selling in the first place? What's the power?
Oh God, there's so many reasons. First of all, everyone's fully distracted. And that's a function of how many devices that we are connected and tethered to. So whether it's our desktop at work, our smartphone, maybe we have a tablet here and there. And of course, the good old-fashioned landline. There's just so many distractions that are making us, a little ADHD, shall we say. I think it's the first generation where people need that instant gratification. They want that instant connection. And, it cuts through the noise. So if you can make your prospect laugh really quickly, you're going to get their attention. You're going to be a ray of sunlight in their day, because small, maybe misunderstood fact is that 70% of Americans are disengaged with their jobs. They don't really like their jobs. So between the stress of the jobs, the distaste for them, and all the data that's coming at us, all the notifications, all the alerts, everyone is distracted and not too thrilled. And if we can deliver our prospects pain or challenge in the form of a joke, we're not only going to make them laugh, but we're going to say, hey, their laughter indicates, hey, it's funny because it's true what you just said. And it breaks the ice. It cuts the tension. Another reason is I think our prospects know how much pressure is on sales reps. They feel it, right? Because there's so many metrics held over every SDR, every account executives, even customer successes heads. And sometimes people are compensated by the number of meetings they book. And sometimes prospects feel that pain, not that pain, but it's being downloaded onto them. And there's a little bit less humanity in the sales process. So making your prospect laugh ultimately will demonstrate that you can connect with them on a more human level. And in the inside sales world, there's no body language whatsoever. So all we really have is our words to get our prospects on board and get people to buy into us.
That's great. And I think putting yourself in the position of trying to make somebody laugh, or at least adding a bit of humor and having fun, sort of changes the mindset, changes the context just a tiny bit, right? Because now it's not about, I have to book this meeting. Obviously that's the goal, but hey, I'm here to have fun. You want to change your mindset. So I'm going to try and enjoy my job. And if one of the ways that I can do that, if it's genuine, if it sort of aligns with the way I do things, is if I'm going to try and add some humor in, then, regardless of what's happening, whether I'm booking those meetings or not booking those meetings or getting tons of objections, I'm still having a good time,
Yeah, not just that. I think what you're saying is really true. It's like, let's have a good time in order to meet our objectives. So our objectives are to get meetings booked. But to get meetings booked, you have to open up conversations. And to open up conversations, you need to relate and connect with your prospect and just kind of make them smile and let their guard down a little bit so that they're willing to have that conversation. And so, I think that's really the big value that humor can play, particularly in the SDR world. And it doesn't not apply to a demonstration over the phone of a particular software or whatever it is you're selling. Humor can be injected at really so many different points in the conversation. It can be injected, but not in such a way that it should detract from the message that the sales rep is trying to get across to their prospect.
Gotcha. So with that said, why don't we transition into what makes stuff funny? So there's so many different ways. If I'm an SDR thinking, okay, well, how can I make my cold calls funny? Am I just going to start telling, knock jokes, when they pick up the phone? Probably not a great idea. Probably not, solid to just go on. I doubt there are too many knock joke opener cold call scripts that are actually that successful. You kind of have to build it in to the, I can see you trying to think to put one together right now.
I like the challenge. And maybe after this call, I'll figure out how to work a prospect pain into a knock joke.
Beautiful. So until then, we need to build in the humor into our regular script, our regular sort of flow of the conversation. So why don't we talk about what makes stuff funny, and then we can see how we can build that into, some of the things we might be doing on a daily basis, like making cold calls and sending emails.
Yeah. So there's a few things that make things funny. And what I'll do is I'll underline those or I'll present those. And then maybe we could talk about, which of those apply to using humor on a sales call or a cold call. So there's a few things. Number one, the ultimate thing that makes things funny is surprise. When people don't see a punchline coming, and it comes out of left field after someone's presented some information in a setup, the setup in a joke lays some groundwork or some expectations in the listener's mind, and the punchline comes along and subverts those expectations. Like I said, comes out of left field. So surprise is number one. Authenticity is really important. And there's a comedian, I'm not going to mention because he's in all kinds of trouble lately, but whether or not we related to him, he was being very real, and people could appreciate the fact that he is being honest and really raw with everything he's doing and saying, and people bought into that, even though nothing he's saying might apply to their day-to-day. That said, relatability is the next thing, and really, to me, the most important thing in humor. Audiences connect most with comedy that they can relate to. So there's a reason why when we watch Netflix specials, Most people love the bits about relationships, marriage, raising children. Airplane food is the old hack one that from the 80s that got a lot of comedians fame. These are all things that we can all understand and relate to. Comedians who like to tell jokes about, Game of Thrones episode 4 from season 3, what happened in the 37th minute. Not everyone can relate to that. Sorry if I'm offending Game of Thrones fans. I understand it's really popular, but you and I have both discussed that we have not watched this show. So whenever I hear some comedians make Game of Thrones references, I only get it because I'm around comedy a lot and I hear other comedians making those jokes, but people who come to comedy once a year, they don't know what they're talking about. So there's nothing relatable about it. Mm-hmm. And the last one is absurdity. So it's something so ridiculous, it just makes us laugh. Like Monty Python was quite absurd. I was never the biggest fan, but at the same time, there are some sketches I love that are just so ridiculous. It's like, how did you guys come up with that? And we're laughing at the absurdity. So those are
I had a hard time just hearing you talk about Monty Python and not smile and think about like the Twit. Is it the Twit Olympics? It's just a bunch of fools.
I'm not a Monty Python expert, but I will just say yes and go. Let's improv.
Yeah, it was just there. It was a bunch of I think rich idiots, and they're running around. It's the Twit Olympics, and at the very end of the race, they have to do this thing like jump over a matchbook, and they can't do it. And basically, it's like falling down a well. And then at the end, the finish line, they shoot themselves, and like a bunch of them fail to do that, and one of them wins, and they like hoist them up. And it's absolutely the most absurd thing when you think about it. It's like, wow, you're chasing towards suicide, but everybody is laughing the entire way.
And everything you just said, every step of that sketch that you described was ridiculous and absurd.
Yeah.
And that's why people laugh at that. So coming back to, comedy or humor, I think humor is the term that I've been advised to use because comedy scares people apparently. Humor in sales is all about relating to your prospect. So when I get on stage and the audience doesn't know who I am, my first job is to get them to quickly relate to me and connect with me. So I'll often make a joke about my physical appearance. I'll tell them, a lot of people think I'm an actor, and I'm not, but I love screwing with people. So I tell them, yeah, I was Bert on Sesame Street. And after that, I got the role of Ross and Monica's dad. You're laughing. I like it. Oh, I'm not hearing a sound. I'm not hearing any sound.
Stop listening to the podcast and jump on YouTube right now and have a look at Ross's dad here.
Ross and Monica's dad.
Ross and Monica's dad. Sorry.
And it's okay, but you know what? No, I appreciate that. But I kind of hate telling that joke because I've been doing it for so long. But the bottom line is my job is to entertain the audience who's paying money. And so even if I don't like that joke anymore, it does get the crowd on board. It does build that connection. Mm-hmm. It gets them to like me because I'm showing a degree of self-awareness. And at that point, they trust me. So
I think that's short-circuiting. That's everything that you're trying to do in a cold call, when you first meet a prospect anyways. You're trying to show that you can empathize with them. You're trying to get them to empathize with you, to like you, and to trust you. I mean, the parallels are right there. Yeah, absolutely. And when I'm making a cold call, I come from a school where my job was to kind of lead with customer pain. Say, hey, Mr. Customer, I understand your pain. I know you and all your competitors are facing these challenges, these problems. And I really believe that if you can frame that pain as a humorous statement or as a joke, which again, I've been told to not say, it's another word, jokes and comedy apparently are bad words for what I do. But I believe it. Jokes are structures. And if we could structure that customer pain in a joke format and deliver it over a cold call, if it lands, and I think it will more often than just some of these tactics that a lot of people use, if it lands, the prospect is going to say their laughter is an admission of that pain. Mm-hmm. Because they're living it every day. And they're seeing certain problems just come up and crop up. And it's driving me absolutely crazy. And the definition of insanity is something that is repeated over and over with no one fixing it. Yeah. So if you can, by landing some of these jokes and seeing how they react, you're basically sussing out and saying, okay, I can understand that this person is, he's dealing with, or she's dealing with this amount of pain. And that really resonated with him. That joke landed, therefore, maybe I should dive in more on this.
Well, when they're laughing, also not only are they acknowledging that, yeah, that pain is real, but you've connected. They're going to let their guard down. They might not buy anything from you, but they will talk to you. That will extend your talk time, and the ice has melted. You've broken it. So take advantage of the fact that they've let their guard down to engage in a more meaningful discussion.
So do you have any examples that we could share of framing up prospect pain in humorous format? I guess we're not supposed to say joke format.
Yeah, we can do that. So should we do the ones that I helped you with?
Yeah. So we basically took some ahead of time, some pains around, predictable revenue, and basically the book, the methodology, and we framed up some jokes in that context.
Yeah. So I focused on one pain because there was a great word in there. And the pain that you told me that a lot of your prospects have is that the account executives don't have leads being fed to them by SDRs. The SDRs aren't doing their job, or there isn't much of an SDR mechanism in place to feed the account executives with leads. So the pain, as I just described it, is kind of the premise for the joke. So the first one I wrote was, a sales team without leads fed to them is like an arsonist for hire, because they sit around, wait for the call, and cause a lot of burn.
I wonder if we could feed in like an extra laugh track here.
Yes, that would be great. If you can, I'm sure that's easy to download. Or you can get the old snare drum, like that kind of thing. Yeah, 100%. I can't. I'm not a drummer, clearly. My timing was off. But I love that joke because it's short, it's quick, and it underscores the consequences of not having enough leads. When we were talking, an arsonist isn't a good thing. It's not a good thing to be an arsonist. It's also not a good thing to be an AE team or a sales team that's not receiving any leads. Both are bad.
Mm-hmm. And so this is really playing on the surprise, right? You sort of got three different, pieces that you're delivering. Sit around. Okay, salespeople can do that. Wait for the call. Never seen an inbound team that does that, and cause a lot of burn. And it's almost like you've got this unexpected sort of double meaning of cause a lot of burn. That makes it humorous.
Yeah, you're nailing it. You've totally nailed it. And that joke is built on a structure, and that we call the rule of threes, where you're making a statement or you're saying something, and to prove your point, you list three things or characteristics or outcomes, and the first two conform with the expectations of the original statement, and the third one comes from left field. And in this case, you said it. The term burn has a couple of meanings. In the sales world, it's all about wasting money, going through cash fast, and in the arson world, it's all about setting fires and causing lots of damage.
Which you're obviously intimately familiar with, maybe not.
I've seen some on TV.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so this is now. Would you deliver this on a, as part of your email? Would you deliver this over the phone? How'd you recommend getting this in front of the prospects? I'm
all about the phone. I've always been a phone guy. I don't really know the science of cold emails, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, cold email comes down to the subject line. Are they going to open it? They're not seeing what's in the body. They're not able to get to that joke until they open the email. So it's all about subject lines. I'm not a master at crafting good subject lines. In fact, I think I stink at it. Yeah. So I'm all about, like, if I was to call you up, I would deliver that joke. I wouldn't ask you, do you have a moment to speak? I wouldn't ask you, is now a good time? I just introduce myself and, sort of say I speak with a lot of people who run sales teams, and a common challenge they have is that their SDR team doesn't feed them enough leads, and then go into the joke as I described it. Gotcha. I think we've actually seen this format now that once you delivered it and you started breaking it down, we've seen this as one of the most popular breakup emails that SDRs send. And it's called a breakup email. It's the last email saying, hey, I'm never going to email you again. But if you'd like, it's kind of the Hail Mary, here's one last chance. Is it A, B, or C? Yes. Right. And I'm sure you've seen this around 100 times. But it's, you're either, I sent you a bunch of emails and called you a bunch and texted you and stalked you on Tinder and all that. And you never responded. So that leads me to believe, one, you went with one of my competitors, or two, it's just not a good time, or three,
you're trapped under your desk because there's a hippo or alligator or insert giant hilarious animal in here. So it's like, it's one that is, you're looking for like, is it A or B? And then you add this third sort of absurd one that obviously isn't.
Correct. Yes.
So I wonder if we could, because that one's totally overused, right? There was a surge about a year ago that sort of it like climaxed about a year ago. Now we see less and less and less of them. But it was really popular because in the early days, it was crazy effective. Right? Because as a salesperson, what you're trying to understand is like, hey, have you gone with somebody else, right? Or is it just not a good time? And the response rate on those two was amazing. The third one was obviously, or nobody's going to say the third one because chances are it's not actually happening. But how could we build the rule of 3 into an email? Is there a format? Is there a way that we can provide the audience with, another, you're locked in your office by a hippo type email?
I think it comes down to the language being used. In other words, is there a play on words that we could extrapolate and turn into something that offers a twist? Mm-hmm. Or just something ridiculously absurd that, again, doesn't conform with those first two. It's all about, like I said, left field.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I like it with yours is you've kind of taken, it's obviously the same idea. It's, you said the rule, as you said, it's the rule of 3, but instead of the hippo idea, we've basically just transposed this into, like you could, as we've got it written out on my screen here, you could use this, as a follow-up. You could use it as maybe not an intro because you want them to have some context into what you're doing, but we help companies with, predictable revenue helps companies, learn what they need to do to feed their account execs. Obviously not what we would write in an email, but, because we found that a sales team without meetings is like a contract arsonist or arsonist for hire.
Yeah.
And then you just bing, bing, bing. Got time for a chat.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not an expert in cold email and really how it works. I just haven't studied that. But at the same time, again, if you could just get them to open the email, look, that joke is short, to the point, and it's got a good little punchline. And if they're laughing, again, it's not a frivolous joke. It's a joke that underscores a problem and a challenge. And hopefully they relate to it and they decide to book a meeting.
So if you're listening, let's do some audience participation, because this episode will go out in a couple of weeks here. And, John and I won't still be drinking, but we'd love if you hit us up on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear how you frame your pain, your customer pain as a joke. And let's play on the rule of 3 here. So the general format is basically a customer type. So our customer type is sales team, without, the metric or the key pain that they're lacking, is like, find something absurd. And then in 3 bullets, we want to tie together with 2 pains that are normal, right? That are expected. And then something that's unexpected or absurd.
Yep.
Right. And then, all right. So that's the format. So ours is, a sales team without leads is like a arsonist for hire because they bing, 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 cause a lot of burn. So hit us up on LinkedIn with your best pain felt jokes.
And I'll tell you what, as an offer, I will take a couple of those pains and try and turn them into really good jokes.
Are you saying the audience can't create great jokes, John? Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying is that more than one great joke is possible from a particular premise. So while they might have a great joke, I'm hoping to also create a great joke.
That's fair. So
I appreciate that.
We'll see, Mr. Geller. We'll see.
He wasn't funny.
Oh man, I wish you hadn't said that. Now it's all I can see.
I know. There's also a little Sacha Baron Cohen in me, I'm aware.
Oh, there we go. I see it. It's the green bikini lines underneath your shirt. They give it away.
Yes, absolutely.
So we've got the arsonist joke now, Pat. What are some other sort of, because you've got a couple other jokes that you put together for us. What are some other ways that we could frame up? Yeah.
So let's just dig here. So here was the other one that we kind of wrote, and this was more classic setup punchline. I think that's the best way to describe it. So, the pain is that SDRs don't generate enough meetings to feed their sales team. If sales was a game, you'd want your account executives playing hungry, hungry hippos, not angry birds who fly away to better jobs.
So all of our listeners in San Francisco might hit too close to home for them.
But what I love about that joke is it's painting also. It's not just underscoring a pain, but it's playing on words a little bit. But there's also a consequence in there. So let's face it, we all know how difficult it is to recruit good folks. Mm-hmm. There's a cost to finding them. There's a cost to training them. There's a cost to them ramping up and being productive. And the last thing you want is for them to leave and you wasted a bunch of money. And that joke kind of not only articulates the pain, but it kind of articulates the consequences of not properly addressing the pain.
So this is more of a comparative, right? It's one to the other that sort of makes the.
It's a couple of things. It's actually, you know what? I was looking at this joke and I was trying to pigeonhole this joke, and it really, it isn't pigeonholable, shall we say, because it definitely has a bit of classic setup punchline to it, but there is a comparison in there. Mm-hmm. That's the best way I can put it. It's kind of a hybrid joke. I think that's what I'm just going to trademark that.
I think the only way you could have made it better is if it started with, I don't get enough respect.
Yeah, definitely. Comedy in sales doesn't get enough respect as it is.
There you go. My SDRs, they get no respect.
None. I should create a bunch of no respect jokes for SDRs. That could be fun.
I think that'd be awesome. On cold calls, my cold emails, they get no respect. There's a whole series here.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. Coming from a large enterprise software environment, I found that can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah, help yourself.
You know what? I'm not going to, because I believe that when selling or being professional, one should not curse. But the crap rolls downhill. And so when I was at Oracle, field management would crap on the field sales reps, who would crap on the inside sales rep, who'd crap on the SDRs. Everyone it rolls downhill. So the SDRs, definitely at the bottom of the food chain, get the least respect. But of course, as we all know, it's one of the hardest jobs out there.
It's absolutely one of the hardest jobs.
Yep.
All right. So I think we got a couple more formats to go through here, just to give people some more ideas and for when they're sending them into us. And the best way to do that, if you're interested, is just write it out on LinkedIn and tag Jon and myself. And we'll add a link to Jon's LinkedIn profile at the bottom of the show notes here.
Lovely. So the last one we came up with, and again, it just comes back to that pain of sales teams who don't have leads fed to them by SDRs. And the joke I crafted was, and this is true, like I'm a sales guy myself right now, and when my SDRs, who incidentally aren't a thing, but I'm a sales guy myself, and when SDRs aren't generating leads, I'm finding other ways to advance my career, like developing a referral campaign, optimizing Salesforce, or figuring out subtle ways to let people on LinkedIn know that I'm open to new opportunities without overtly writing "open to new opportunities" in my profile. Yeah, so that's a rule of three. It's also a little classic setup punch at the same time. I mean, there's a comparison. I don't even know how to classify that one. It's rule of three more than anything, because again, if you're employed by a company and you're a sales rep, you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs, right? Because you aren't getting leads, you have no one to talk to, and you're kind of going to start to look around for some other things to pitch in and help out. So that's kind of what that joke is all about.
Great. So you've obviously done a lot of cold calling. Can you talk to me about some of your favorites? Like, talk to me about some of your favorite times when you've used, stand-up or not stand-up itself, but humor on your cold calls? Like, do you have any examples from sort of outside the SDR world that you maybe have used yourself?
Right. Well, so sorry to clarify the question. You're talking about like right now in my sort of self-promotional phase as a trainer coach.
It could be as a trainer coach. It could be the history of Jon back when you were apparently slacking off at Oracle and fibbing about your forecast.
Oh no, I never slacked. That's something I never did. When you're an inside rep at Oracle, at least back in the day, sometimes things weren't fully in your control, but yet you had to report to the field. And we'd have a regional sales meeting, and your deals go up on the board, and you just got to show you're confident as hell. Otherwise, they're going to question what you're doing. I always hit my numbers, so there's that. That's okay. I did it, but at the same time, you never fully knew how you were going to do it based on the way that back in the day, the forecasting system worked at Oracle. It's complicated. We won't get into it right now.
That's fair. Forecasting systems are crazy. I haven't encountered too many, but I will say we just interviewed Jamie Buss from Zendesk. She'd be on the previous episode. If you're not a fan of the previous forecast, or you've been in an organization that hasn't done that very well, absolutely check out with Jamie. It's a longer one. I think we spent an hour and 15 minutes, but she went through every single one of their sales stages and every single piece of qualification criteria that she'll like drill in on their reps. And it's by far, they're the most methodical and intentional company I've met that does forecasting. The only other one would be Mike at Full Contact. And we recorded that one about a year ago, 9 months ago. So anyway, sorry to digress. We were talking about cold calling and incorporating humor. So do you have a couple examples you could share with us there?
Well, for my Oracle days, I wasn't a comedian. I had no clue how to write a joke or what that was all about. I was all about, just cracking something about the city I was calling into, showing I understand where you're from through my knowledge of, pop culture, what have you, like making common references about a particular city or place. So I just kind of use my knowledge about who I'm calling and just to kind of like use my natural sense of humor. Not everyone has that. I recognize that. In what I do now, a typical little tactic I have is I do something really unique. I'm helping sales teams use humor to better relate, connect, and engage. And so I'm very honest about that. I'm quite passionate about that. So when I call up someone cold, I say, hey, this is Jon Selig. We've never spoken before, but this call will be a lot like a craft beer, unique, refreshing, and ice cold. And that gets that reaction. And at that point, they're like, I'm glad you laughed. And that's what I want to help your team do, is make more of your prospects laugh so that you can better have more of a conversation.
Because if that joke doesn't land, do you just hang up? You're like, there's no objection handling from here. There's no like, yeah, I swear I'm a funny guy. My mom, she's got all my jokes on her fridge. Like,
no, you know what? You know what's really funny? In stand-up comedy, I have bomb jokes written. So if a joke that I know works usually doesn't work, I have a bunch of placeholder jokes that I'm able to put in so that I can dig myself out of the hole. It's not quite as easy on a cold call. That said, look, we fail in cold calling a lot. We're going to fail, even if the joke doesn't make someone laugh. We're probably going to fail with that person anyway.
Yeah. And they're going to enjoy the fact, I don't know, maybe they'll enjoy the fact that it's like, that was a really, really bad joke. I'm not going to laugh, but like, I see what you're trying to do there. And at least it's different as opposed to the other 100 people that they've called or that have been calling that same prospect that haven't tried something that unique.
Yeah. And the reality is, no matter how funny a joke is, or no matter how much we nail it, we are interrupting someone, and maybe they just regret picking up the phone as soon as they hear a voice that's not someone they expect. Mm-hmm. So we might not be able to win regardless, even if we're telling, the most brilliant jokes on the planet that relate, that help them relate, help us show that we can relate to them. It just might not work. And that's comedy and that's sales.
So what are some of those, talk to me about those, your bomb or the jokes that you would have in preparation for if you were to bomb. What were those like?
Sure. Maybe salespeople can relate to this. So I have a bachelor's degree in business, and I also have a master's degree in business. And so I kind of tell some jokes early on my set relating to that. If a joke doesn't go well, I go, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you know that if you want to do stand-up comedy, if you want to do what I'm doing right now, you don't need 2 business degrees. All this takes is passion for failure. That and the bus pass, that's all you really need.
Awesome. So you've got a couple of these in your back pocket just in case like it doesn't land, and then you're.
Yeah, I have about 3, and one's even like a little bit. So it's more than just a joke. It's more than just a line. It's kind of a series of jokes that really digs me out of the hole.
Can I trouble you for that line?
Sure. Can I trouble you for a bunch of SDR services? Can we do that?
It's done.
Great. I like this trade. I've delivered a couple of jokes. You make 24,000 cold calls for me and get me a bunch of gigs. I like that.
Yeah. Jerry, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but John owns it.
Don't worry. It'll work out for everybody. I'm good with it. So when a joke doesn't go well, I will say, ladies and gentlemen, what you might not understand, you didn't laugh at that last joke, but what you guys don't understand is that stand-up comedy is my addiction. And when you guys don't laugh at a joke, it becomes less of a comedy show and more of an intervention. So to those of you who didn't laugh, you're kind and compassionate. And to those of you who did, you're part of the problem. And it gets laughs, and I'm like, okay, the cycle's perpetuating itself. So
yeah, people are laughing again. We're back on track.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if when you're cold calling, do you have a couple of these sort of as backup just in case that first one doesn't go well?
I just kind of use my natural ability to say, to kind of acknowledge that, well, that didn't get the laugh I was hoping for, because it's not stand-up comedy at that point. They're not expecting someone to be on stage or they're not receiving a call expecting to hear a bunch of jokes. So I just cut to the chase at that point. I'm able to swallow my pride in the fact that they didn't laugh and just tell them why I'm calling at that point.
That's fair. I think it's exceptionally challenging as part of a cold call. I think you've got more of a captive audience when you're on a discovery call or you're on a demo.
Yeah, I agree with that. That said, I'm really trying to understand what's true and what's not about what I'm saying. So I'd love to be able to kind of run some pilots with some folks out there who might want to say, yeah, I'd love a kind of a cold call script that's really prospect pain reframed as a joke and just see what the results are. Because I do believe that it'll increase talk time, it'll get more callbacks off of voicemails, and it'll lead to more book meetings. I really believe that.
That's amazing, John. I really appreciate the offer to the audience. One last question before we go. What would you say is one thing that, because I think when you're getting into cold calling, when you're in sales, when you're getting on the phones with prospects, getting your mindset right before you go into these calls is almost more important than what you say, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a great script that works really well, but you show up and you're miserable and somebody drank the good coffee and you had to use instant and you're just pissed off, obviously the call's not going to go well.
No.
I imagine there's some significant parallels with stand-up comedy. If you show up in a similar situation, unless you're a certain style of comedian, which that works really well for. But if you're miserable when you show up, the show is probably going to be more of a challenge than if you're in that right frame of mind. So what advice would you give to SDRs to help them get into this frame of mind?
There is an irony to what you just said. The times where I don't feel like doing stand-up is usually the times I do the best on stage because it's channeled. There's something about it where there's a little bit of anger and a little bit of resentment towards everything, and that just can come out in a very good way, depending on the types of jokes you write. If you write happy, fun jokes and you do act-outs on stage, and it's all about just being ridiculous and silly, and you come off as angry, there's an incongruence. On stage, I'm a little cynical. I'm a little dark at times. I know it's hard, shocking to believe that a comedian can be a little dark or a little cynical. But sometimes my frustration in my day or my challenges in my day enhance what I'm doing. So while I definitely agree that it's not good to be in a bad mood to make cold calls, it can work for comedy. That said, I mean, if you're an SDR, your job is to make cold calls, figure out how to have fun with what you're doing. It might not be a joke, but maybe there's ways to challenge yourself. Maybe slide in something new that you would never attempted on a cold call and figure out how to make it more relatable. Figure out how to play chess with your prospect a little bit. If they keep interrupting you at a certain point in your pitch or your script, figure out how to short circuit that and make it a bit, this might sound cheesy or corny, make it a bit of a game for yourself and a bit of a challenge. So I do understand that cold calling and doing stand-up is not quite the same. But this is the best approach I have. I've heard this term smile and dial. I do believe that you should be in a good mindset to make cold calls. And, maybe it takes a few failed calls to get into the mindset of like, this is my job. I got to do this. And being in a bad mood isn't serving anyone well, particularly me.
Well said, Jon. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Sure. So my website is jonselig.com, Jon, there's no H, JONSELIG.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Jon, no H, Selig, SELIG. You can find me on Twitter, Jon Selig. Those are the best ways.
At Jon Selig?
Yes, at Jon Selig.
With an H or without an H?
That would be really dumb of me if I had made one of them different than the others. The rule of three, you hit me on the third one. So definitely no H. Just leave that silent and invisible. Keep it out. And worst case scenario, you could also find me on Instagram, Improbable Comic.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on the show. If you want to get in touch, we'll also drop his LinkedIn, Jon with no H, into the show notes. Thanks for being here today, Jon.
Thank you for having me.